Ever get that feeling? You know that feeling where the truth is like, ah.
Well, it's less like a solid fact and more like a slippery fish.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Well, today's deep dive is a perfect example of that.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, we're dealing with a crime so twisty-turny it could make your head spin. We're going all the way to Barcelona, back to 2017.
Barcelona 2017 sounds intriguing already. What happened?
It's a story of love, betrayal, and a confession that's got more holes in it than Swiss cheese.
Oh, confession full of holes. Now you've got my attention.
So picture this. It's 2017, Barcelona's buzzing, life's good, and then bam, the city stumbles on a scene straight out of a nightmare.
Oh no, what kind of scene?
A burnt-out car. And inside, the charred remains of a police officer, Pedro Rodríguez.
Oh my goodness, that's awful. Yeah, and it gets even more intense because guess who the prime suspects are?
Woo! Don't keep me in suspense.
Two other officers from the Barcelona Guardia Urbana, Rosa Peral and Albert López.
Whoa, officers involved in the murder of a fellow officer? Talk about a recipe for intrigue.
It's like someone threw a grenade into a pressure cooker, right?
Exactly. You've got the high-pressure world of law enforcement, a potential love triangle gone wrong, and of course, a murder. It's a lot to unpack.
You're telling me. So let's rewind a bit and untangle this love triangle because it's the key to understanding everything that goes down. Pedro, Rosa, and Albert, all part of the same tight-knit group within the Guardia Urbana. It sounds like a recipe for disaster, right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. The close quarters, the shared secrets, the potential for jealousy and betrayal. It's a tinderbox waiting to explode. And that's exactly where the investigation zeroed in from the get-go. The relationships between these three officers became the focal point.
And did they find anything concrete?
Oh, they did. The prosecution built a pretty compelling case using phone records that placed all three of them at the crime scene on the night of the murder.
Wait, hold on. Didn't one of the articles you sent mention something about Rosa's ex-husband being framed?
Ah, yes, you've got a sharp memory. Early on, the investigation did point towards Peral and López trying to pin it on her ex, who also happened to be an officer, but his alibi was airtight, which led the investigators right back to Peral and López.
Wow, that's some desperate stuff. Sounds like they were scrambling to cover their tracks. So with all this evidence sacking up, they arrested both Rosa and Albert. What happened at the trial? Was it an open and shut case?
Not exactly. The trial itself was a real spectacle.
Oh, wow. How so?
Peral and López turned on each other like a pair of rabid dogs.
You're kidding.
Nope. Each one claimed they were innocent of the murder, but admitted to helping dispose of the body after the fact.
Classic he said, she said scenario, huh?
Exactly. They were falling over each other, trying to pin the blame on the other.
So what did the jury make of all this finger-pointing? Did they buy it?
Not a chance. Despite their claims of innocence, the jury wasn't convinced. They saw through the charade and slapped both Peral and López with a guilty verdict. Peral got hit with a 25-year sentence, plus an extra 5 because of her relationship with the victim. López got 20 years. You'd think that would be the end of it, right? Justice served, case closed.
Yeah, seems pretty straightforward.
Oh, if only it were that simple. This is where the plot really thickens. Fast forward to today, 2024, and Albert López, after almost 7 years behind bars, is singing a slightly different tune.
Okay, now you've got me hooked. What's he saying after all this time? Is he finally coming clean about that night?
Well, he's making a sort of confession, yeah.
Sort of. What does that even mean?
He's admitting to being involved in the murder, but
But what? There's always a but.
he's claiming he's not the one who actually killed Pedro.
Wait, so he's saying he was there, but...
He's now claiming that Rosa Peral was the mastermind, the one who actually did the deed.
Hold on. So after all these years, he's throwing Rosa under the bus. What's his story now? Why should anyone believe him?
His new story is that he only helped her cover it up because, and get this, he was emotionally dependent on her.
Emotionally dependent? Come on. That sounds like a seriously flimsy excuse, especially after all this time. And with his parole hearing coming up, you gotta wonder, right?
Exactly. The timing is definitely suspicious. It makes you question whether it's genuine remorse or a calculated move to sway the parole board.
Right, like is this a get-out-of-jail-free card disguised as a confession?
It's certainly a possibility they'll have to consider. They're pretty good at spotting inconsistencies and figuring out the real motivations behind these kinds of admissions. Imagine you're on that board listening to him.
Oh man, that would be intense.
You've got to consider the timing, his behavior in prison, his record. It's not a decision I'd want to make.
It's like those true crime documentaries where someone confesses and you think it's over, but then things start to unravel, it makes you wonder if you can ever really trust a confession, you know?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And here's another twist for you.
Another one. Lay it on me.
López hasn't actually formalized his confession.
Wait, what? Did he just admit to being involved?
He confessed to therapists as part of a prison rehab program, verbally.
Verbally, so there's no record?
He hasn't submitted anything in writing or formally changed his story in court.
So it's basically his word against everything else.
Pretty much.
Does that even hold up legally? Can you even use a verbal confession like that?
It's tricky. A verbal confession without any other evidence to back it up, it's not impossible to use, but it's definitely an uphill battle.
This whole thing is like a maze with no way out. What about Rosa Peral? What happens to her if his confession is considered valid? She's still stuck in prison, right?
That's the big question. Could this be her chance to appeal her conviction? Even if they don't fully buy his story, it throws a wrench in the original narrative.
So this could change everything.
It might. It's possible that the original verdict was based on incomplete information. We just don't know yet.
This is crazy. It's like his confession, real or not, has the potential to rewrite this whole story.
Absolutely. And that's what makes this case so fascinating. The shifting stories, the hidden agendas, the question of whether justice will actually be served in the end. It's a lot to wrap your head around.
It's like a legal thriller unfolding in real time. But with all this legal back and forth, are we missing something? What about the motive? Was it really just a crime of passion? A love triangle gone wrong?
That's what they focused on during the investigation and the trial. The jealousy, the betrayal.
And it makes sense, right? On the surface, at least.
Sure. But some of the articles, especially those mentioning previous scandals within the Guardia Urbana, suggest there might be more to the story.
Oh, right. I almost forgot about those. Peral had filed a complaint about those explicit photos being shared, and López was involved in that chase where a civilian died.
Exactly. It just adds another layer to the whole thing. Did Pedro know something about these scandals that Peral and López didn't want getting out? Were they worried he might expose them?
Now it feels less like a love triangle and more like a full-blown conspiracy.
It's a tangled web, for sure. Even with the investigation, the trials, and now this confession that throws everything into question. The truth about what happened that night in 2017 is still a mystery.
So what happens now? Will this confession be the key to unlocking new information? Or will this case remain a mystery forever? So many twists and turns. It's like we're trying to solve a puzzle, but someone keeps swapping out the pieces. Do you think there's any chance they'd actually reopen the case? Or is López's fate entirely up to the parole board now?
It's tough to say. Reopening a case like this, with all the attention it's gotten, well, they'd need something really solid, more than just a confession that pops up years later.
So even if the parole board sees right through López's story, he might not change anything for Rosa.
It's a tough pill to swallow, but that's how it goes sometimes.
It's just, can you imagine being stuck in prison, hoping that this confession, even if it's a lie, is your ticket out?
It's a harsh reminder that justice isn't always quick or easy. But regardless of what happens in the courts, one thing's for sure. This whole story, Pedro Rodríguez's murder, all the twists, all the unanswered questions, it's going to stick with people.
It's one of those cases you just can't shake, this idea that the truth is buried under lies and betrayal and these messy relationships. It's almost like a Greek tragedy or something.
It really makes you think about our justice system, doesn't it? How can you tell when a confession is real, especially when someone's freedom is on the line? And can there ever really be closure when you might never know the whole truth?
Big questions
Yeah.
and no easy answers. It's no wonder people are so drawn to true crime. It reminds us that the line between guilt and innocence, truth and lies, sometimes it's razor thin.
Couldn't agree more. And it shows how important it is to think critically, especially now when we're bombarded with information from every direction. We can't just accept everything we hear as the truth. Question, consider different perspectives, dig a little deeper.
Well said. That's a wrap on another deep dive, folks. We've waded through a story of love, betrayal, and a confession that's got more layers than a cake. Just remember, things aren't always what they seem. Keep asking questions, keep searching for the truth, and we'll be back next time with another story that'll make you think twice about everything you thought you knew.